After seeing the whole situation with Fallout 76, I've been kind of disgusted. While I've never truly played a Fallout game, the way they built this game is appalling, honestly. But, after watching this dumpster fire, I realized that I own the original Fallout in my Steam account. So fuck it, I might as well play it, and boy was I pleasantly surprised. The game begins before you even start the game. Yeah, that made sense. You watch a short cinematic and get into a character creation screen more important than deciding if you're male or female in Wizard 101. And that's saying something. The character screen is everything. This will dictate how hard the game is going to be and how much you may or may not hate this game when you finish it. When I first started playing this game, I heard that you could play with low intelligence, and your character couldn't speak because he was so mentally handicapped. I decided to make what I would call the Tard build. Supreme strength, luck, and agility, horrible everything else. And I was ready to brave the wasteland. You are treated to another cutscene explaining your situation. You are a resident of Vault 13. A vault being one of the structures that kept civilians safe from the nuclear explosions and fallout. The game takes place 84 years after the initial bombing, and this game has you sent out from your vault in order to find a water chip. Your vault's current water chip is broken, and without a new one, your vault will run out of water. And now, the game begins. Gorengar, I didn't pick his name, punched his way through the vault's cave systems and entered the wasteland. Being the Tard build, he was only going to use his fists, and the game was going fine in the beginning. And then I got to the first settlement, Shady Sands. Turns out, when you can't speak to people, the game gets a little more difficult than it should be. My only options in dialogue were various grunts and moans, and the people who did talk to me berated me or treated me like a child. And since this was my first playthrough, I had no idea what to do, and this made my playthrough actually almost impossible for me. I eventually broke and created a new character. This time, he specialized in pistols and, had 10 intelligence in order to compensate for my past failures. After working my way back to Shady Sands, I started to enjoy the game a lot more. The dialogue is, what do you know, very helpful, especially for your first playthrough. I got to know the residents and even took up some of their side quests. And while you are on a time limit, it isn't too bad and goes away after the first main quest. I'm glad I started the series here, because I don't know how much I would have appreciated this game if I had played the later Fallouts first. Something about this game is just super atmospheric and eerie. The soundtrack to Shady Sands being one that immediately comes to mind. Shady Sands is the first town you'll come across, and usually the first town in RPGs is like cheerful in some way, but here, it's just spooky. The music in this game is designed to spread dread and misery. There is nothing nice about this soundtrack. It's all so bleak and it's amazing. This is the most atmosphere I've heard in a soundtrack, hands down. And with this game, the gameplay is completely different from later entries. While Fallout 3 and onwards kept the game in a first-person perspective, this game is in a trimetric perspective, and you interact with the world with your mouse and various hotkeys that make your life just a little bit easier. If you ever play this game, press F1. You'll thank me later. You can move by clicking with your mouse, and you can interact with the environment in various ways by right-clicking and then clicking on the thing you want to interact with. Sometimes this... what am I even saying? This does make inventory management a pain in the ass, but eventually you'll get used to it. And while this game does have a lot of depth, and I mean a lot, the world itself can feel kind of barren. Here's what I mean. You have this grid for a world map, and while you can technically go to every single one of the squares, 90% of them don't have anything of interest. The only times they will is when this game has random encounters, and you're forced to stop for those. But in areas that are designed, like cities, and, like special areas like vaults, it's really nice, and their design is amazing. And in this game, the combat is also, due to the different gameplay style, completely different from later games, as this is actually turn-based combat, baby. This combat runs off of action points. These bad boys dictate everything from movement to shooting to even opening your inventory, not to mention pulling things out of your inventory. The combat is fun, but it could take forever if there are a lot of enemies. So I would recommend turning the battle speed up all the way so it doesn't feel super slow. This game is truly a classic, and if you're a fan of Fallout, I would wholeheartedly recommend playing this game. And if you're not a fan, I still recommend playing this game. I mean, I love the lore in the series after playing this, and this is my first Fallout game, and just, there's something about it that just hooked me. I don't know what it was. I just found it super interesting, until Bethesda started to retcon shit and turned the series into what it is today. Great.
Maybe you'll think of me